Hola amigos, bien ok. Hoy yo quiero compartir con ustedes algo poco diferente. Es mi nuevo blog. So, es algo que estuve escribiendo después muchos años aquí, pero hoy creo que es una buena idea para compartir con ustedes, porque tiene algo otro para leer, tienes algo otro en inglés para escuchar, pero también en la descripción yo voy a compartir el link y tú puedes leer estas o también algo con las otras para el pasado. Listo. Okay, so today, something a bit different. I'm going to share with you my blog post from today. I've been doing these blogs now for off and on about 10 years. Not so many, more this year. I've been doing a bit more often. But so I thought I'd share it with you today. I'm going to read it today, a bit more like a podcast. So give you something different to listen to. And again, like with all kinds of readings, should help you get a better ear for the sounds of the language. So all the spelling mistakes are mine. Here we go. So, England, my England. Salutations, dear reader. So here I am, looking out from the balcony onto another splendid day in sunny Medellin. The Festival de Flores is in full swing, but this is not my topic for today. Today, I'm going to reflect on a common theme of questions that I've been asked a number of times recently. The sort of questions you only get when you've been acknowledged as the local expat resident. Namely, what is England like? And why do you English say that word like that? Nice, easy questions, really. Of course, nothing in any of the classes I took at school really prepared me to answer them. But put on the spot, and being quite literally our man on the spot, I had to improvise. And in doing so, I realised that my answer said more about me than it did about my native land. And that's the real joke. England, my England, is just that. It's my picture. It's a snapshot taken from my mental scrapbook of half-remembered history and people and places seen. So where to start? Well, the first question was on spelling. Now this, as any new student of English knows, it's a dark art. One rule for this word, this sound, but in the next breath, an exception. Why? That's the rich heritage of our language, of course. A nice mixture of the Latinate, Germanic, Nordic, Celtic and Francophone languages, to name but a few. All this nicely cooked together for 600 years or so after the Norman conquest, until the first widely printed example of how to spell what we say, the King James Version of the Bible, in 1602. Shortly followed by Shakespeare. All right, that explains a bit the spelling problem. But how about the other question? What is England like? This calls for a more diplomatic answer. Depends on who you ask and when, I say. How do you mean? Comes the reply. Well, trying to put some perspective into the answer, or at least some distance from it. Take my great-grandfather, born in Ireland about 150 years ago, arrives in London at the end of the 19th century, no electric lights, no telephone, no cars, etc. Fast forward to 1981, and my grandfather watches the first space shuttle launch in a live broadcast from Cape Canaveral, all from the comfort of his armchair on a colour television. Okay, technology has changed, but what is England like? Well, it changes, but also remains the same. Sorry? I don't understand. Well, that makes two of us, but let's not worry about that now. It all depends on who you ask. I mean, my view of London is a combination of my childhood visits to my grandparents in the 1970s and my later return to the capital 30 years on. A lot of changes. My grandparents wouldn't recognise much of it today, but that's just the new buildings and a change in the population mix. So what I realised in trying to answer this question is how much the shared memory of my childhood, that is the things I saw and the stories the adults of my family shared about their memories of their childhoods, all these things have coloured my memory of what England is like. And my grandfather's anecdotes of his life growing up in London more than 100 years ago, my grandmother's memories of her brothers, survivors of the First World War, veterans of the Spanish Civil War, tales of the Jarrow marches in the 1920s, the Second World War, the Windrush immigration, Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, and all this blended with my memories of the often rerun British cinema films of the 1940s and 50s. It's a Sunday afternoon staple on BBC Two. So how do I describe England, my England? It's no longer the foggy London of the 1950s. Most of the red phone boxes have disappeared now. And the events that were spoken of so often as a recent memory when I was growing up, the Blitz, D-Day, food rationing, Passchendaele, the Spanish flu epidemic, the Great Strike, these two have faded into the history books. Now, I am a sum total of these memories and more of the books I have read, the voices I've heard, the people I've met since. But now, transplanted here to a wonderful exile in Medellin, I have the pleasure of turning all of this experience into material for my conversations with my students here. And with these conversations, this piece of England, my England, is beginning to take on a Colombian flavour. And this is a good thing. Until next time, hasta pronto, amigos. Cheerio for now.